There are times when you have to tell a loved one something that they probably won't like. The message is often unpopular or conceived as harsh or but truthful. It's with sincere love for the well-being of young men that I offer this often unforgiving but necessary message. To some, this will come off as offensive. Some may even say it's sexist, but the obvious evidence cannot be denied. The best way to raise a boy is the strong presence of a man. I qualify this column with the emphasis on this being true for some, but not all. I would even venture to maintain that it's safe to say that it's the majority to be true. I have both personal and professional experience working with coaching, teaching, mentoring, and raising young men for more than 20 years. It's the 2 decades of research, hundreds of live subjects, and often documented proof that developed this conclusion: how single women raise some sorry-ass men. Now, although I just emphasized the phrase some but not all, I'm sure I still get tons of responses from people referencing their success stories raising or being raised by a single woman. Let me save you the trouble by highlighting the more high-profile example of the President of the United States who was raised in part by a single woman. He's an example of the exception, not the rule. During my 10 years working in juvenile justice system, I interviewed hundreds of young troubled male youth in the system. A strong majority all had one thing in common. That common was no father in their life. The correlation between lack of a father figure and juvenile delinquency is no big surprise to anyone. Having no father figure has potentially devastating consequences. However, there is a more subtle damage that is done that is compounded by well-intended single women raising these same young men. By nature, women are more nurturing and forgiving, which leads to an environment with less discipline and more leniency. To a growing young 17-year-old male, that usually means fewer consequences and more defiance and more enabling. No matter how much a single woman tries to discipline her son, a 17-year-old boy will not respond the same way he would from the presence of a man. As an example, as a high schooler, I had great reason to fear my mother. I've seen her do some damaging things to some people, some physical damage to some men, women, and children whenever she got angry. So I had reason to fear her. Discipline, right? But no matter how hostile, aggressive, and even violent she would be, as I got older, the only voice that would keep me in check was my little 5'4" older brother Herman. He would check me. His presence and tone and occasional thump on my doggone head was just what the doctor ordered to keep me on track. A young 17 or 18-year-old male will always respond different to the presence of a grown man. Single women who continue to raise their now grown men in their 20s cause even more damage by continuing to mother, and she stifles their development by doing too much for him. She doesn't expect him to provide as much the demand of the house as long as she is paying the bills. Although he is of age, he's still in the stature of a child. She still feeds them, houses them, and she even allows him to live in the house without even contributing to the finances. He can come and go as he please. He may not even continue to clean and maintain the upkeep of the house. She even further fuels his dependency on a woman by buying him expensive athletic shoes. He can sit around and play video games all day with little or no expectations or accountability for his actions. He is now officially a sorry-ass grown man living off of his mother. Anybody know anyone like that? There are plenty of them. He will repay his mother by hindering her from finding a significant person in her life. He will do all that he can to keep her from finding and developing a serious relationship with a man because he knows as soon as she get a full-time man in her life, his years of freeloading will be over. This usually crosses over to how he treats the next woman in his life, expecting the same dependency on her. These are the type of young men that are growing out of this generation based on the absence of a father and mothers, single mothers, raising sorry ass men. So after publishing this column, I got some interesting feedback, phone calls, and posts all over the place. Some people who passionate about this subject. This is a very controversial topic, of course, sensitive topic as well. But let me emphasize and let me qualify and let me frame this by knowing that anyone that knows me knows the work from This Youth Generation, Raised in Hell, that my life's work revolves around improving the quality of life for young men, particularly young black males, because they are the greatest need of help worldwide. So with that, this subject matter just brings out a very sensitive but necessary topic that we need to address to help improve the conditions of young black men. So when I published this column, I got this feedback, and I want to share some of the thoughts with you. This comes from a reader from Daily Republic. Mr. Price, however well-intended, you're right about one thing. Your article is offensive and sexist. I have noted in this and other pieces. Nonetheless, I think you mean well, and you are probably the product of similar-minded home and community. Your blame of single mothers for the poor jobs you feel they do is misplaced. Your article should be focused on the real problem, the men who produce children with no intention of sticking around to take responsibility for them. Thank you for reading. Now, if you have not read the detail of the article, you would have also picked up the fact that, yes, we have constantly addressed the responsibility of men. Ideally, the best case scenario is two parents in the household with the presence of a man and a nurturing of a female. That's the way it was intended to be. That's the way it should be. However, our environment and the reality that we live in is not conducive to that all the time. So I have addressed the issue of absent fathers. I qualified by entering one of the first statements in the article says the best case scenario and the cause to most issues is the absence of a father. So you agree. I agree with you. That was not the intention of this article. Another column is response is from Mr. Practical. He writes, I believe Deon has addressed deadbeat dads in the past. He is not saying that single mothers are the sole problem, but some are still accountable for their choices and need to be responsible in doing the best thing for their kids. EJ, his response was, this would be different. That would be a different topic, talking about deadbeat dads. This topic is clearly focusing on moms raising sons without a father figure and the consequences that may occur. An article on deadbeat dads is a different topic, so get over yourself. This is D from Fairfield. What a load of garbage. The single-parent household, men or women you describe, are raising pets, not people. Nonsense. We get that too. Two sides to every story. So a reader out of Fairfield. Every story is a good story until you hear the other side. This is simply the other side of the story. David from Vacaville writes, thank you, Mr. Price, for having the courage to write this article. Truth is never easy, but always necessary. Boys and girls, in my observation, always do better with the presence of a strong man in their lives. While others focus on the isms du jour, you speak clearly and forthrightly. G from Vallejo, I've known a lot of very successful men and women raised by a single parent. I believe it's the parent's will that makes a child. If you think you'll get something for nothing, or someone owes you for the treatment or mistreatment of your ancestors, then your child will think the same and perpetuate your thoughts. A strong woman is something to be feared. Good point. So here's what I respond. So we get those feedback. Well, let me be clear on it. I appreciate all the interesting comments, and I encourage your feedback as well on this topic, because it's an ongoing topic that we need to discuss. It opens a discussion, and it speaks to a very critical issue that affects our community from all aspects, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all cultures as well. So when is it necessary to ask for help when raising a child? Is it okay to have a father figure, an uncle, a mentor, whatever. Sometimes our egos will think that we can do things on our own and we don't need any help. I think that's part of the problem here. And young men who are in this situation need to recognize that you think you're getting off easy by taking, some men will choose, if they have the choice, to side with their mother or live with their mother as opposed to their fathers. And I've seen this in my own experience as well, where the young man will be given a choice. He'll say, well, I'm going to stay with my mom. Why? Because he knows that it may be a little bit easier in terms of him doing what he wants to do, as opposed to going with his father, who he knows more than likely not going to let him sit around and eat and drink and not get off his behind and cook and clean and do what he needs to do. No father's going to do that. A great high-profile example of that is the film Boys in the Hood. And if you know that popular film, the mother made a very difficult but wise decision to allow her son, her loving pride and joy, to go live with his father at an early age, early preteens, critical age for that matter. And Dad, who was played by Lawrence Fishburne, put it down on him. Said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to handle your business. Playtime is over. And that's just a high-profile example or a movie example, but that scenario can be true in so many other real-life situations. This Youth Generation, pick up the book, Raised in Hell, access to the column, This Youth Generation. Let's continue this discussion. Thank you for reading. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel, This Youth Generation.